Another alternative, Carissa, could be using the phone, because I have an iPhone, and with the app, apparently I am able to share my screen of the phone. But I don't know if this would be easier for you or not.
I think for now I'm just going to try to go with it analog, and we'll figure it out for next time.
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll give it one more minute and then we'll get started. Just a few more people trickling in, grabbing some coffee in the hallway, etc.
Robert, there's a Roger Garcia that's trying to get in, and it continually keeps failing for him. So I don't know if anybody knows him.
I do not know Roger.
I don't either. He probably needs to and I don't even know how to get that message to him. He needs to retry.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Robert Hawkins. I'm our global lead for innovation and technology at the World Bank. It's fantastic to have everyone here today. At the EdTech team at the bank, we support both our colleagues working on projects and our clients and Ministries of Education think about how to effectively use and implement technology to improve teaching and learning. And we work across a host of different issues, from digital infrastructure to digital content to learning management systems to educational management information systems. But we also look at kind of frontier technologies. And blockchain is one of those frontier technologies that has garnered quite a bit of interest and potential amongst both clients and colleagues. In this forum, what we've done is, because it's a new frontier technology, there's lots of innovation that is bubbling up in all different parts of the world. So what we've done is we've formed a community of practice, trying to identify interesting networks, individuals, that are kind of working at the frontier of this technology and looking at the application of this technology for education. So this is the second in a series of 6 seminars that this community will be presenting over the course of the year. The first one that we did in February was kind of just looking broadly at what is the blockchain and what are the potential uses in education. In this one, we're zooming out. One of the use cases that is most familiar and most applied is the issue of credentials and using the blockchain to certify and have trusted credentials on the blockchain. But there are many other applications. And what we want to do with this session is to zoom out a little bit and look at its application to networks, and to facilitate collaboration in ecosystems, to look at the role that the technology can have to incentivize collaboration and to incentivize a sharing of value across actors in an ecosystem. So we're very excited to have a number of fantastic speakers, as well as some use cases. Now, what we will do after this, the next series will then delve more deeply into kind of the credential piece, because in the education system, I think most people do rightly see a credential is the key value that students will leave an education system, and that credential has real value. We'll look at issues around assessment, and then we'll zoom out at the end and look back at token economics and the ways in which you can incentivize groups of actors, again, to participate and add value to teaching and learning. So again, this is we want this to be a conversation. We encourage everybody to, if you have questions, to put them into the chat, to kind of share any information that you have that is relevant to the conversation. If you want to share anything about yourself in the chat, please go ahead and do that. If you want to jump into the conversation, please use the raise your hand button and we'll bring you into the conversation. And even if you don't expect it, as my colleague Marcelo can attest, I might just drag you into the conversation. So again, thanks to everybody. With that being said, I want to kind of pass over to one of our partners in this, Chris Purifoy from the Learning Economy Foundation, to kind of introduce our first speakers. Chris, over to you.
Great, thanks, Bob. Yeah, I just want to start by saying welcome everyone. We're very excited about this series and everything that's happening. This is, as he said, our second in a series of 6 events we'll be doing every 2 months throughout the year. That is really, we like to think of it as building on a pyramid of knowledge a bit. We started with the first one with, blockchain and fintech and education. Like, what is it? Why does it matter? How does it affect education? This one very specifically is focused on the ecosystems and the cyber networks, the decentralization and how this is going to be really important for education. Our next one is on the skill economy, and then learner credential networks, assessment and measurement. And in December, we'll wrap up with token economics. And the hope is that by the end of this, we've built a community of practice that understands the importance of these technologies and have had some aha moments and start to understand how they can be helpful in their own contexts and with their own use cases. And by the end, hopefully we have, some great collective collaborative work, that we're working on. And so we're actually going to try to solve some of these really existential problems that, some of these new technologies afford. So we're very excited about this. And, I know the next speaker we've had kind of giving a primer on this one. And, she is on our board of directors at Learning Economy. She was fundamental to the beginnings of our organization, helping us, from the very beginning, see and understand the importance of this in a way that we weren't able to. So I'm very excited, enthusiastic. We also have Alex Gretsch, who is joining to help us host, who will be walking through some of his use cases. And he's been one of the premier pioneers out of Malta, helping to do some of this work nationally in, some of the very first work that's been done. So there's no one that really has a better, a direct applied purview of this. So I'm very excited to hear from him. And after that, we'll pour into some use cases, as Bob said, and hopefully have a great open discussion. I know that everyone here is, an expert in your own right. And, this is a private event, but it's an invite event. So, for the next ones, if you get the invite and there's someone that you feel like should be here, please go ahead and forward it along, but let them know that, it is a private event. So we're excited to continue growing this group and just excited for where this could go. So I'll turn it over to you, Krista.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here today. I'm excited to share with you. In like any good tech experience, I've had my own tech experience here, and the Microsoft Teams does not want me to share any slides. So what I was going to share with you, I've now tried to kind of recreate in the last 5 minutes, and I'm gonna work all analog here. So I'm just focus in on, hopefully you can see me, because I'm gonna hold up some things in the screen and we're gonna roll with this, okay? And we will be using the chat window, so I'll ask for your participation there as well. Yes, thank you, Rachel. Teams is struggling this week. I'm feeling that. So I'm a designer. I am the director of teaching and learning and adjunct professor at Stanford, and I teach design to graduates and undergraduate students. And as part of that work, do a lot with how do we look at emerging technology as a design medium. So I want to give you a quick primer first as to how I see this education problem, this blockchain use case problem. So this, I'm holding this up here. This is what I see as design work. Like there's a lot of products that we make as designers. Like, for example, I got this iPhone here. This is a product. It's a physical product. And on here, I have all of these digital products, these apps on here. Somebody designed all this stuff, right? Like somebody created, there's a lot of design that went into that. Now, this product here enables any number of experiences to happen, right? I can have a video call with a grandmother on the other side of the world, right? Somebody designed that experience. They had to think about how that happened. Then each of these products on here, each of the experiences it creates is part of any number of systems. So if I get new apps, I get that from an app store. That was a system that was designed. As an employee of Stanford, I am part of their system. They provide this phone. I am a cog in that. Somebody designed how that happened, right? I have a phone provider, an AT&T phone provider, like I'm in that system. Somebody designed all of that. And now there's any like number of different types of technologies that power everything here, right? We all know that like if you type in the chat on your phone, you're sending somebody a message, you deal with autocorrect, right? There's a machine learning algorithm that is correcting your mistypes. You know, I have a name that isn't necessarily common in the American English dictionary, right? Carissa. So it often, like if one of you typed it in, it could autocorrect to carrot, or my favorite is carcass, right? Like, and how does that make you feel when the technology, even subtle things like affect you, right? And then there's the data that powers all of that too, right? So like what is that dictionary that powers that algorithm, right? What data are we using now? And all of this has to be designed. Right? And blockchain is one of those technologies. We're talking about that today. The education system is one of those systems. All of these things are interconnected. Whatever we create has implications out in the world. First order, second order, unintended consequences. As designers, as creators, whether or not you consider yourself a designer, if you are building at any one of these levels, right, you're connected to the other ones. You gotta be considering how they're all related. So whether or not you're the tech person, I feel like you have to understand like what this landscape is as we're building and creating. That's important for blockchain. And so that leads me to a couple points about my point of view on emerging tech. So, you know, when we build things, it's really easy. Like if you're gonna make something, let's say like out of paper, you can feel paper, right? I can crunch it, right? I get a sense for the types of folds it can make. This is a very like tangible material. But now, if we are building with something like blockchain, which is like, you know, half of us kind of like smile and nod, right? Because you kind of get it, but you kind of don't, right? Like this is a mischievous material, right? Like that, like, you know, like AI, things like that. It's not clear how they work, right? It's not like wood, it's not like paper, it's not like cardboard where you understand how this material functions. And my point of view on this is you don't have to know exactly how the code works, but you do have to know what the code can do. And so if there's, so first point I want to tell you, right, is whether or not you consider yourself a tech person or absolute blockchain creator, right? You don't have to know the code. You do need to know what that code can do, what it can bring about in the world. Because in the same way that you can like look at some wood and you may not be a home builder, but you get a sense for like how you could put these two pieces of boards together to build a structure, you need to be able to look at a material like blockchain and say, ah, I know what kind of system I could build with that. Right? Because the minute that you get that, you're part of the conversation. And I firmly believe that if we want tech to represent all of us, it has to be created by all of us. So again, you do not need to be the tech person, but you have to know what the tech can do so that you show up in the products, in the systems that we are building. And this is more important in education than almost anything else. Okay, so I'm going to try to do an experiment now to introduce you to like what blockchain feels like. We'll see if this works. If it doesn't, I've left you with 2 points that I feel really strongly on and feel good about that. But let's try something here. Do you have the ability in the chat to just chat me? Is that possible in Teams? Does anybody know? Let's try this. Okay, what I would like, if it is possible for you to just chat me, I wanna play a game here. I want you to message me, just me, with one wish that you, okay, so private chats don't work. Okay, so this is gonna be even better. Great, look, great. Okay. All right, we're gonna have to imagine that everybody is just messaging me, okay? So this is gonna be our act out of how blockchain works. And what we're gonna do here, just explain it step by step. So hopefully this translates. We're gonna talk about the types of system that blockchain creates, right? And if there's, let me just back up 1 second so I can bring everybody along here, because we're not looking at pictures. Somebody said to you, "What's blockchain?" And you answered like computer code, right? You wouldn't be wrong, but you might want to have like a slightly more sophisticated answer. And so the idea is like that if you said like, well, it's computer code where records of things are linked together. Okay, great. And let's take it one level further and think about what that can do. So it's computer code that allows our systems, our education system, whatever system, to run in a distributed way. Okay, so what does that actually mean? So now let's try to act out a centralized system, which is what a lot of the systems we have in the world are. And we're going to then act out a distributed system. Okay. So let's start with a centralized system here. And all I want you to do is, if you can, let's pretend that everybody's just messaging me. So you're going to need to channel that. And I just want you to put in the chat like one wish in your life, in the world, that you hope comes true. Okay, don't overthink this. Just write something fast. Just write something fast in there. Okay, I see some wishes coming in. I'm just gonna put a little caveat here. If your name starts with like M, you cannot participate. If your name starts with A, you can't participate either. Okay. Okay, a lot of wishes are coming into me, and I am the decider here. I get to figure out which wishes I want to come true. Okay, all right, I don't have to tell you how I'm deciding. All right, I'm gonna cut it off now. So actually, like, Taylor came in too late, Ben, you came in too late, Sharon, Jim, yours don't count. Okay, so I have a bunch of wishes that came through here. Some people's I'm going to take and I'm going to make those come true, right? I am the central decider here, right? I am the person that is making all of the decisions. I said to you, some people can participate, some people can't. Why I made that decision is opaque. You don't know why I said if your name, starts with A or was it M, you can't participate. It feels arbitrary to you. So some people are allowed access into my system and some of you are not. Some people didn't get in time, so they didn't have as easy, for whatever reason, slower internet connection, didn't see it. Like you didn't have the opportunity to get into the system. Also, my system's pretty vulnerable. Like if it got hacked, you wouldn't really know if some of those messages weren't there, or you don't know like which ones I actually took the time to read or how I even make a decision about what is coming through, right? That is like how our centralized systems work. At the same time, like I could easily say, hey, Simone's wish about spiritual awakening is going to be the wish that I make come true for everybody. I can make a decision pretty quickly. It's fast and easy. Okay, so I've operated here as a centralized system. And now let's flip it. Let's try to act like a decentralized system. So go ahead now, same prompt in the chat window, and you can write the same thing if you want, but now message and now here's the idea. We're messaging everybody about one wish that you hope might come true. All right, and just humor me and write it in again. For the sake of seeing that come through. Everybody can participate, great. All right, and now what's happening here, this is our new distributed system, right? Everybody's wish here is logged. We see the order with which it came in. We all have a copy of this on our computers so that if one of us goes down, we can look at everybody else's record and say hey, what should the record have been? if you know, Philip decides to like change around the order of the information on his record and try to pretend like that's the real thing, the rest of us can say, hey, actually, no, what we have doesn't match what Philip has. Here's what the real record of everybody's wishes are. We all have the same rules. It's transparent what's on this list, and the rules are standardized. However, if we wanted to say like, hey, like which wish do we make come true here? It's a lot harder to prioritize. It may be harder to figure out how we make a decision. We still have to govern this system. So there's pros and cons to both centralized and decentralized ways of operating. But hopefully you get a sense of the feeling on how the different, like how those two things operate differently. And with decentralized, what I want to leave you with here is to think about what elements of our education systems could benefit from being decentralized, from using blockchain, right? So which pieces of our education systems could benefit from increased transparency, trust, equitable access? Right? If you're not a tech inclined person, think about that, right? Think about what pieces of education need transparency, trust, and equitable access. And you will be operating, thinking about how to best integrate blockchain into education ecosystems. And so I'm going to leave you there and thank you for playing along, and hopefully you get a sense of what blockchain is, what it can do, and its importance for education. And I hope the tech works for everybody else, and looking forward to hearing the rest of the speakers today. So I will pass it on.
Thanks so much, Carissa. I think it'd be great if everybody wants to just kind of throw into the chat some aspects that they think would be interesting or useful to have education systems be more transparent or more decentralized, just to kind of collect the collective intelligence of the group here. Chris, let me pass back to you to introduce our next speaker. Chris?
Great, yeah, thank you. And Carissa, thank you so much. You know, again, I don't know if it was said, but Carissa is the Director of Learning at Stanford D School, or the Design School. And you can see now why I fell in love with those types of ideas. I mean, just being able to see it from an analog perspective really helps to put everything into perspective. And so really, really great. Thank you so much. I'm sorry about the tech challenges. As I mentioned before, has really just a deep well of knowledge, both from applied science of blockchain and credentialing systems, as well as the research side of things. He leads a bit of a research association and does just a number of things. He wears a lot of hats, and he's very, very smart in the realm of helping us understand the applied sciences of decentralization and why it matters and what has worked and what hasn't. So very excited to hear what he has to share. So I'll turn it over to you, Alex.
Thanks, Chris. I'm going to try and share my screen. Okay, can you see that, I guess? Somebody tell me? Yeah?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to try and run through this. And I have a very homesick cat here sitting on my printer. So at any moment in time, you might see this whole thing wobble. I've been trying to figure out how to deal with that. I'm a strategist. Okay, so I'm a specialist generalist, if you want to call it that way. I'm not a technology guy. I'm somebody who helps people build things and help people see around corners. I've been involved in blockchain, trying to understand the blockchain since about 2016, 2017. I've written about it together with a colleague of mine who I think, Anthony Camilleri, who I think is is listening to this. I'm involved in projects trying to understand the impact of emerging tech on whatever we call education. I'm involved in a big EU project where the EU is trying to build infrastructure. And maybe, my claim to fame initially was I kind of project managed the world's first education certificates blockchain system, I guess. And recently I published something together with another colleague, Luis, who's here. Okay, and it's just been published on Frontiers. Having said that, let's just dive into whatever we mean. By the way, I forgot to tell you that what I'm going to talk about is something called new concepts old problems, aligning incentives. So new concepts. Clarissa did a brilliant job of going through many of these things. I'm a simple guy, you know, so I looked at the ecosystem. What the hell do we mean by an ecosystem? And whatever definitions you look like, people start talking about community networks of interactions between organisms and their environment. So it could be us trying to understand the sentient world around us. It could be even trees and roots and how they grow, or it could be, well, whatever we mean by networks these days, yeah. Computer networks maybe. But I like to use the analogy of the tree, and using Jose van Dijk's article, maybe we should look at this thing called education within this idea of information ecosystems, which continue to be hierarchical and interdependent. And I think if we look at the layered shape of the tree there, it draws attention to the dynamics of power and how power is concentrated, this whole vertical integration, the idea of infrastructure, the roots, the idea of the trunk, and the idea of what grows over there. I think it also gives us an idea of how education as an ecosystem has to compete with other things, particularly at this time of the world, you know, with healthcare, with the idea of mobility, with news, fake news, the reality, you know, and ultimately what drives most things. Also, this looks like the American platform tree. And so look at the idea of what's public and what's funded, that's the dark side of things, and what's private. So there's quite a lot of white stuff there. If you compare this to my part of the world, there's a bit more public non-profit happening. We're still looking at the roots being, you know, the stuff I don't really understand, you know, the computer hardware and the devices and all those internet protocols and things like that. And what's above that are these apps, I guess. So I just want to have this at the back of your mind if we're trying to decipher what an ecosystem is all about. When you get to education ecosystems, again, diving into it, it's an ecosystem perhaps that facilitates the internal but also the external environment of sometimes the stand-up comedy of teaching and learning. I still teach at the University of Malta, but maybe we should also think in terms of collaboration and exchange of value, you know, the acquisition of knowledge, of skills, of content, advice, beliefs, experiences, habits, you name it. But we tend to conflate this with this stuff, isn't it? Bricks and mortar as opposed to this lot, or worse, one-size-fits-all models where everybody's supposed to be looking like everybody else. Here's a slide I nicked of my friend Mart Aro, who's also here. And Mart is a pioneer in looking at new ways of dealing with this thing called education or education ecosystem. So I really like this idea of a system ecosystem, which is very much microservices based, for instance. And if you read Mart's paper, I mean, you're looking at the idea of, you know, education as an information layer, which is the backbone of it, but you've got, you know, the idea of portable profiles or credits and exchange marketplaces, law, single sign-ons, pedagogy, certification. I think on the left-hand side is the more communist side of things, no? That appeals to us who are a bit more on the left. You know, everybody's got the right to quality education. We need solutions to improve learning that can come from anyone and anywhere. The idea of a learner-centric approach, lever on whatever tech is available. Here we're talking about the blockchain. Scalability, a sustainable business model. All learners must have access to solutions in an inclusive way. We need infrastructure that allows everyone to propose solutions to problems in education. You look at that and say, yeah, that would be nice. So is this happening or is this not happening? So then the third layer is this, you know, holy grail of decentralized education system, ecosystem, whatever that means. And I think for me, it means it should be learner-centric. It should facilitate self-sovereignty, empower the end user. It should be open, which means by openness, I mean open innovation, but also open source. It should be trusted. So if we've got networks, they must be fluid, but they must also be transparent. It must facilitate peers, so it must be coupled or blended or inductive or shared. I think you should leave it on this taxonomy of building blocks, I guess. And this teases us into DLTs, distributed ledger technologies. And this is where I think we can get to levering on the affordances of the blockchain. Affordances of the blockchain. And again, there's a lot of literature out there, the many pioneers, many technologists. So this is almost like the lingua franca of anybody looking at blockchain. No, we can all recite it. No, the affordances of the blockchain. It's about individual agency. It's about empower self-sovereign identity, even though you can have self-sovereign identity without the blockchain. But the idea is that the user is central to the administration of his or her identity. So here we're talking about cryptographic computational trust. It doesn't break, it's hack-proof. We think, we hope, immutability. So we're talking about cryptographically linked records, that the data on the block cannot be altered or changed. The notion of transparency, of process integrity, the validation of provenance in an environment which is frequently low trust. The notion of decentralized democracy, the replacement of hierarchical structures by trusted architecture and, decentralized autonomous organizations or DAOs. The idea of disintermediation, the verification of peer-to-peer transactions without a center, without a mediator. And then the other holy grails of interoperability, the notion of seamless exchange of verifiable information for use by others. So you look at that and say, duh, right. And education, right? Well, you could say that the holy grail of in education should be an institutional evolution through an education DAO, for instance, okay? So imagine a higher education institution really represented by the rules created by consensus, encoded as a computer program that's transparent, controlled by, say, a faculty, the distributed faculty of university, and not influenced by a central governance system. I'm thinking, I wonder if one of these exists. And we could do this through smart contracts. In other words, we could get the really boring stuff of administration and finance and get all of that to work with smart contracts. And it can operate with external information, execute commands based on this information without human beings being involved. So we can sack all the accountants and sack all the HR people in university, which would make academics like me very happy, even though I used to be an accountant in my past. So the community of stakeholders is incentivized to get involved in this education DAO through some token mechanism. And once funded, operational, all the decisions on where and how to spend funds are made through consensus mechanisms specified in an open source code. And that this DAO becomes fully autonomous, completely independent from its creators, as well as anyone else for the matter. If you think this is utopia, there was a white paper for something called Wolf University in 2018 that literally this was the blueprint for what Wolf University was supposed to be. And Joshua Broggie, who had a philosophy background, the University of Oxford, he really pushed and pushed to make this happen. Has it happened yet? Not yet. And yet, and maybe my friend Sharon might be here, and I really love this when I saw Sharon's article, which said, does education have a problem? Then put a blockchain on it. But then rather, sardonically said, will blockchains fix everything? Let's propose a better question. How might blockchain support the educational ecosystem to increase access, provide opportunity, and promote success for ultimately the people we should care most about, the learners, as opposed to the institution? In 2018, I had come across this article, I think, we're now in 2021, does this still stand? 20 ways the blockchain may improve education. Now, what I marked in yellow were things I could relate to at the time as a strategist. Verifiable credentials and transcripts, the idea of reworking badges. What can you do with student records? Can we really do something tangible about self-sovereign identity for learners? What about, the idea of prepaid cards, that you could create new business models, for instance, for universities that are also trying to reach out to students who might not be able to pay all their fees all at once. Smart contracts, of course, record management. But, you look at that and you kind of think, yeah, it should work. Can't it work? And in my part of the world right now, there's the EU, a bureaucratic organization, 27 countries. For some reason or other, the EU is currently building, on the base of the European Blockchain Partnership, a whole European blockchain services of infrastructure. And what you have in front of you is literally a screen grab from how this Europe-wide ecosystem will work, for instance, for verifiable technologies. So from one point of view, you could say, nice chart. Will this be adopted? Well, that's about $400 million at the moment, 400 million euros, which has gone into the system. Time will tell, I guess. A couple of weeks ago, I literally had the pleasure of presenting something to my university, and I just put it up on LinkedIn. And I said, I'm going to talk about blockchain, self-sovereign identity and credentials. And somebody pinged me and said, my team and I have already built the blockchain platforms you're going to be discussing. I'll send you our white paper and other information if you're interested. I mean, that's the white paper there. So for all I know, there's an education ecosystem in front of you, and it's got wallets and a space for nonprofits to get involved, and smart contracts all over the place, and schools and teachers are involved. It's there. You can read it. The thing is, why hasn't this happened? And all I'm going to share with you in one slide is my experience of the various barriers one finds whenever one starts talking about blockchain and education on one side. And the thing is that resistance to changing anything can come in many forms. And these are some of the things I've come across. One is, a mistrust of trustless technology. I remember, being in a room with the government CIO when I said we're going to roll out a system of certification called BlockCerts on the Bitcoin public blockchain, and no, there's no centralized database. And he said, are you out of your head? Okay, but we did it. So that's the first thing. Okay. The second thing is decentralization is perceived as a threat to institutions that thrive on central governance. I am the rector of a university. I'm the CIO of a university. You think these guys are going to fall in love with the blockchain immediately? The third thing is that the notion of interoperability has a technical, a legal, a semantic, and the governance dimension. I don't have time to deconstruct those, but we remain obsessed with the technical dimension. Those of you who are technical and are in love with the blockchain. I would say that the governance dimension is the one that continues to scupper things. By governance, I mean people who are in positions of power. In nation states, they might be ministers, they might be public officers. At universities, it might be whoever is running the university and doesn't think it's a good idea. Levels of security, privacy, and scalability required for public digital services tend to be higher than in any other industry. So a lot of people might say, this might work in somewhere else, but not in education. This is the hallowed house of education. We're looking after young people here. So that's the dilemma. There's also this trust minimizing architecture is also versus the idea that human beings trust human beings in terms of trusting the automation. We're still a long way off from that. Cybersecurity sensitivity, the perception that we don't have enough insufficient levels for data and processes are involved. People keep on saying, what's the analogy? The blockchain is like a hammer looking for a nail. It's immature, it hasn't happened yet. Those of us who love open standards, there are many people who look at, I remember in the early days of BlockCerts, a lot of people used to go into the code, GitHub, and literally steal it, and close it, and it becomes a private product. There's nothing open or decentralized about many of the blockchain models we have. And innovation in education tends to be slow. The ideas within the academy or ministries of education frequently tend to be stillborn for various social, economic, and political reasons that have nothing to do with the beauty of the technology. So I think in my final bit, what I'd like to leave you with is, how do we get things done? And I think the idea is about aligning incentives. And what I would suggest is that it helps if we focus on disconnects, where things don't work, to determine where blockchain may add value to education. So my view is that we need to get pragmatic. Should we focus on the idea of edu-DAOs, or should we focus on new means to facilitate lifelong learning? I would suggest that it helps to start with real life tangibles. Everyone understands what an education credential means, not just in education, but in people's houses and people starving themselves so that they can send kids to expensive universities. That's something that you can really get people to understand very quickly, and that's what I did. Here's a paper certificate. We can now take it digital. It now gets notarized on this thing called the blockchain, and then it's up to the learner to be able to share that with other people. Get it? People get that. Education ecosystems, however, are going to have to be forced to change because of COVID-19. Many of them are losing their business models right now. Many of them are in trouble. There's no such a time as now as when various Luddites in key positions in higher education institutions have been forced to admit that let's look at Zoom, even though I've been trying, not to use it for many years. Another thing we should look at is that TVET organizations, professional education organizations tend to be more amenable at risking than, again, higher education institutions if you want to look at doing something within those organizations. Lesson I learned, human networks just can't be automated. So if we want to do something, we better identify the change agents that can both deconstruct and lead. And by here, I mean people who understand business processes, communicators, data ownership gurus, evangelists. One of the things we were talking about a couple of weeks ago internally, maybe we should identify some process templates, say even from the World Bank, as to what blockchain-enabled change might mean. And so I think I'm really passionate about this idea that I think we've got an opportunity here to build a community of practice to sustain this kind of change process. And this is simply the last bit. What we did was, instead of scaring people by saying we're going to do everything for a whole country, it helps saying we're going to do a pilot or we're going to use a sandbox, and being able to demonstrate, I think, that something works. And using the example, I guess, of not just what small countries have done, but also what cities have done, and use this notion of here's a pilot in a city, it works in Colorado, it works in Malta, it worked in the Bahamas, let's try and do something else. This is a really good way of encouraging people to support change. Okay, so that's what I had for you. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Alex. That was a lot of information to consider. We will be recording this, and we will share kind of the recording afterwards. If there are any questions for either Carissa or Alex, please raise your hand now. We can take a few minutes to have a bit of a dialogue, or just put them into the chat. Our next session is getting into kind of this issue of the real life tangibles, and looking at 3 use cases from 3 different parts of the world that have been exploring and thinking about the use of blockchain to address some of these system issues with regard to engaging people in a more transparent and effective way. So if there are no questions, let me jump into our first case. And even if you have questions during these cases, please just throw them into the chat. But let me introduce Ekwa, who's going to share with you some work that she's doing in Africa with universities called the Africa Centers of Excellence. And again, the focus of this session is around ecosystems. Who are the actors? What are the agreements? What are the incentives? And what are the outcomes that actors will produce working together? So Ekwa, please introduce yourself and share a little bit about the objectives of your project, and then we'll have a bit of a discussion. We'll also bring Wes into the discussion as well to kind of share some perspectives from Asia. But over to you, Ekwa.
Bob, can you hear me?
Yes. And we see your presentation, so you're all good.
Okay, excellent. I think I was breaking a bit, or you were breaking, I don't know. But great, thanks so much for the introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Ekwa Bentel, and today we're presenting to you a little bit about the work we are doing within the context of the Africa Centers of Excellence project. And I think it fits very well in terms of the conversations we've had so far from both Carissa and Alex, and I think they are tough speakers to follow. And so right now, I also just want to put it out there that this pilot involves, a village. It's not just me behind this. I have several colleagues that are tax team leaders, country tax team leaders, consultants. We work with the universities as well, and several of these people are connected on the call, and I can't go through every person's name. Also, some of the companies that we're working with, particularly Verify Ed, on the blockchain aspect is also connected. We have colleagues from the African Association of African University, Isondo Dumo, who's the director of ICT, also connected. So it's a village, and you see my perspective as I go on in terms of this ecosystem that we have. So I'll start us off with what is the Africa Centers of Excellence. So the Africa Centers of Excellence program, it's basically a series of regional higher education projects that are funded by the World Bank, and more recently, we have some co-funding also from the French Development Agency. And the aim of these projects is to improve education, training, and applied research, mostly at the postgraduate level in key priority fields, but we also have a few programs at the undergraduate level. And these programs cut across the STEM fields. We have mining centers that focus on mining, on water, on ICT, and so on. And then we also have centers that are basically focused on agriculture, health, and various other fields. This regional higher education, the regional approach basically allows us to pool resources, and I think Alex mentioned some of this, within the ecosystem to address critical skills and applied research needs that are common across the African countries. And the ACE projects are complementary to the various national higher education projects that are ongoing in the countries. We use a results-based financing approach, which means that funding is tied to results that have been achieved and verified. And we have a few things that we look out for, try to achieve within the context of these projects. For example, strengthening specialized programs. We look at internationally accredited programs. We look at providing learning resources and labs, rehabilitation of buildings, just ensuring that the facilities and the environment is conducive for learning and research. And then also regional thematic networks. That's something that we're working hard a lot on to ensure that we have these regional networks that are for various activities. And then we also have specialized short courses, which comes into play in terms of these micro-credentialing that we've been talking about today. But most of our centers right now do not have, are not providing micro-credentials to the students that take these short courses. And then we also have strong linkages to partners, whether in academia, government, and different agencies. But this cuts across from academic institutions to the private sector in Africa and outside of Africa. We have three main projects. We have ACE1, which was the first project in the series, has 22 centers across 9 countries, and it closed in 2020. And we have ACE2, which is based on Eastern and Southern Africa. ACE1 was in Western and Central Africa. And then that is in 24 centers in 8 countries. And then more recently, we have ACE Impact, which was launched in 2019. It has, together, we're looking at about 53 different types of centers. And it's across 11 countries in Western and Central Africa, including Djibouti. But we have about 18 centers that participated in ACE 1 that were given additional funding to continue under ACE Impact. This gives, looks very scattered, but
so Ekwa, this is a good point. I want to jump in here before we get to the actors. One of the main objectives and challenges with ACE gets to the issue that Alex raised around kind of the value of a credential, and you piloted kind of the use of the blockchain to kind of test a verified credential, so that the private sector had trust in the skills that the students were graduating from, and that the students would be able to have transferability across countries, and that the institutions participating would also have trust that the quality of that degree, that diploma, that certificate was of value. And I think key to this are all of the actors in this system. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about kind of this objective and how you see this this idea of pulling these organizations together through credentials kind of playing out in the future, and maybe talk a little bit about all of these different actors in this ecosystem, because it's a massive ecosystem.
Sure, thanks. That's a good point, Bob. And you can see from this next slide what our overall platform looks like, right? So we have the universities. We are working with about 9 universities in this pilot, and like Alex also indicated, this is a pilot. We wanted to do a proof of concept, right? So we have 9 universities, and students are coming from these universities. And we work very closely with the universities to socialize the idea within the context of their own institutions. What we have going on is that we have 2 sets of platforms, right, that are very much connected. We have one platform that is looking at the digital skills gap of students and faculty members. So within that platform, we have more than 700 students and faculty members that have taken the self-assessment to determine, what are the gaps in terms of their future jobs that they hope to have and how they can fill those gaps. And then we go on to the next block, right, which is actually blockchain based. And we are supported with this work by Verify Ed, and we have YAS connected as well. Basically, once a student has done the assessments, identify the gap, they have the opportunity, if they want to go onto this online learning portal and then take courses from IBM and Future Learn. These are MOOCs that these students can take, and based on their certification, they can have these credentials that are blockchain based and stored under the profile of the students. And then we also have, and currently we have about 150 courses that are free, that are available from IBM and Future Learn that our students can take. And then we also have, linked to that, we have a recruitment dashboard. And the goal of the recruitment dashboard is that, okay, how can we put in the same place all these micro-credentials of these students, the courses that they've taken from IBM and Future Learn, and then in addition to that, the transcripts of those students that have been pre-verified with their universities, and also the student has agreed on to make public, right? The student has that option to decide what courses they would like to display to potential recruiters. And with this, we are working with the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana and Moore University in Kenya to just test this out to see how well this will work. And we have over 9,500 certificates that have been issued on the blockchain based on the students' transcripts across about 100 courses. And then we are working with GIZ to pull in these potential employers, right, that are from Germany but are willing to recruit from Africa, students or graduates basically that have some digital skills. And they keep telling us, we have vacancies to hire students. And so we're working with these 2 organizations. So, Bob, basically this is the ecosystem. You can see we have the universities, their students, the faculty members. We have companies like JobCred, Verify Ed. We have content providers, digital content providers like IBM and FutureLearn. And then we have the recruiting side with Amalitech and Azubi Africa. So as well as with GIZ, right? So we have all these players coming to play in this ecosystem.
So Ekwa, can you talk a little bit about the incentives? Kind of what do each of these players hope to gain and their incentive for collaborating, sharing information, participating in this ecosystem? And there's also a question in the chat that's being answered around the issue of digital wallets, because this is an issue around custody, ownership, and the risks around kind of losing your private keys and kind of losing your data, which I think is being answered in the chat. But maybe if you can just touch on a little bit of the incentive question. And then Wes, I'm going to tee you up in a second to come into the conversation and share some perspective.
Thanks, Rob.
Certainly. So in terms of the incentives, on the World Bank side, we wanted to basically pilot this and see if we can show that we can use blockchain to remove things like, sometimes there's fraud in terms of the students' transcripts or in terms of the courses students could say that they've taken, right? And so this was a system that we felt, okay, let's try this out. Also creating these micro-credentials is a whole culture that needs to be developed more in the region. So we're very interested in seeing how this would work and also linking the students to jobs. At the university level, the incentives are massive, opportunities for them to assess the digital skills of their students, also opportunities for access to free online courses for students, job opportunities for the students, and then also access on the student side to verify digital transcripts and micro-credentials so that they don't have to always go back to the university to get these credentials, right, in terms of paper transcripts. In terms of the companies that we are working with, I think there's also a strong interest in seeing how they can work within the context of Africa, because this is new technology, right? And it's important to see what they need to have in place to make this work. In terms of the MOOCs providers, opportunity to build a culture of micro-credentialing in Africa is there, and also enhancing their user base in the region. For the industry players like IBM, they get access to a pool of students that can also access additional ICT tools on the IBM side, and also to enhance the recruitment. And that is one thing we've heard over and over again from Amalitech and Azubi, that they really are excited about this because there is strong opportunity to benefit from the streamlined recruitment process that we have here. And then also just working with other development partners like GIZ to help them scale an initiative that they already have existing in Africa to bring in German companies to hire people in the region. In terms of some of the risks that you had mentioned around it, it's still a work in progress, and we are trying to see in this pilot phase, we are still in, I would say, relatively early stages of it, particularly on the recruitment dashboard side of things. And we build as we continue on this work, and hope we can also scale to other universities as well.
Thanks, Ekwa. So this is a super interesting use case that is already beginning to test blockchain for certifications, a massive network, lots of different actors, and lots of possibilities to build on, I think, some of the issues that both Carissa and Alex shared with regard to kind of transparency, reducing friction in the system, trust, etc. Wes, can I bring you into the discussion to maybe reflect a little bit on what Ekwa presented and share some perspectives from your work on digital credentials and use of this technology? Wes, introduce yourself as well.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm here in Bangkok, actually in Thailand. And Ekwa, that was just a fantastic presentation. I work with UNESCO and also the Learning Economy Foundation as an advisor. So my perspective is very much along the line of how can we get governments to be part of this solution as well. So I just think it's such an important project at scale when everything you're talking about is so massive that, how can we bring more and more governments to be part of this process? Because looking back at where we started, Chris started us off with this idea of a decentralized community. How do we pair that with the idea of an excellence, a community based on excellence, decentralized versus a closed network? How do we open that up and think about this inclusion process? How do we think about existential problems, implications out in the world that Carissa said? So I raise that because I think open data could be part of this solution, at least in the credentials world. How do we describe learning outcomes? How do we make that data available to more networks, more people? Because I truly believe governments want to be part of this. It is a process of how do we get them involved? And I'm sure you're reaching out, and I'm just curious, how do you see the role of government in this kind of innovation process as you build this network? So that's one of my first questions. The other is, I looked at the ACE project, because you've been influential in ADB in Mongolia. We actually, Marito Garcia is on the line. Other people have been really thinking about this and reaching out. We use this model in Mongolia, by the way. So your model and your work has just been influential and really, a great use case for us also in Asia. But one thing I looked at is the number of publications, the number of outputs, the number of different types of credentials that have come out. What does that mean in terms of open access? There's a lot of issues in there where we're still publishing in elite networks and closed academic journals that are not accessible. So this is another area where we think about, are we reinforcing excellence, or are we thinking about this open community that's created by us and for us, as Carissa mentioned earlier? So I pause there, but I think about the role of government in open data and how governments can be part of the solution. Just curious on your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks very much, Wes. I think those are very good questions. In terms of our engagement with governments, I think the beauty about the ACE project is, in some sense, the decentralized aspects of it, since we are talking a lot about decentralization here, in the sense that each of the universities that are participating in the project gets to own their own implementation process, implementation plans, right? So we're able to work with them within the context. Of course, the government that is providing through the World Bank the funding, right? That goes to these different centers of excellence. But the idea is that we can work with the universities, and if we can get a very good use case and prove the concept, then the idea is that hopefully some governments would start adopting this. Because I think this is a very different mindset in terms of how things have been done over the years, and it will take some time. But we are taking one bite at a time, and hopefully with this pilot, we would see, some, not just one university, but several universities within countries, and hopefully, within actual countries. But I'm not sure if that will happen within the time frame of the project. I just see that if we can actually prove this and show that it works, hopefully that can be picked up in our national projects across the World Bank. And happy to hear that the ACE project has influenced some of the work in some of the other regions as well. On the point on open data and publications that are accessible, I think that's a very good point. And within the context of the ACE project, right now we don't have really a repository where all the centers and their research outputs, the publications can flow into. And you're right, we have our centers. Some of them are highly prolific in terms of how much they put out there. But we are hoping that we will be able to leverage the digital platforms to consolidate some of this work. We've talked about it in our regional meetings. I remember even when the first ACE project was running, ACE 1, where there was some discussion, how do we ensure that in Africa we have that repository for whether it's thesis, whether it's the actual publications. And Nodumo, connected from AAU, I think she's been doing some work from the Association of African Universities, some work on that. So I think there's thinking around it, but we've not really taken a strong step in that direction yet.
Thanks, Thanks, Ekwa. Thanks, Wes. I mean, this is a fascinating use case. We've got lots of other universities on the line, both from the US and Europe, as well as the case of Indonesia that Marito's been working on. So I think there's lots of opportunity through this community of practice to kind of share some of the lessons, some of the challenges that, with this short presentation, we haven't been able to get into too much depth with, but I encourage all of you to connect bilaterally between these sessions to kind of continue the dialogue. But this was an awesome presentation of the opportunities amongst universities in Africa. The second
Bob,
use
may I
case.
just add just
yes.
one point? And true, we are very open for collaboration. Please reach out, no matter the region, whether it's on the research aspects or whatever it is. We are open to have discussions around that. Just wanted to reiterate that. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Ekwa. So the second use case we want to look at is one that we'd mentioned before, which was another case in the education practice at the World Bank, where we began to test the application of blockchain technology in the context of a research project that we call Evoke. And we implemented this in Colombia, looking at two factors that are really key to our broader operations at the World Bank that both Carissa and Alex have mentioned, as well as Ekwa. This first one is this idea of results-based financing. So we often disperse resources based on results, not inputs. So how do you verify those results is a real challenge, and it's costly. So for every dollar that we put into these projects, we spend an additional 50 cents on just verifying the results. So one of the questions is, how can smart contracts, the rules embedded in these results, be a way to reduce that friction and those costs? The second is this idea of transparency, of disbursement of resources. In this case of Colombia, it was looking at a case of conditional cash transfer, where we provide resources to the government and the government provides resources to out-of-school youth to incentivize them to enroll in skill building programs, stay in those programs, graduate, and develop skills. And again, how can we ensure that the resources put into these programs are extremely transparent and reach the end user, meaning the student? So these were kind of two of the issues that we were looking at in this pilot. And I want to introduce now Santiago, who, when we started this, was in the Ministry of ICT, but has spun out and developed his own innovation lab, who is our main implementing partner. Just kind of share a little bit of his perspective, as well as kind of where he wants to go in terms of using the blockchain to really empower students to create their own ideas, their own projects to address development challenges first of all, in Bogota in this next iteration, then Colombia. So Santiago, over to you to maybe introduce yourself and some of the objectives.
Thank you, Bob, and hi, everyone. My name is Santiago Garcia. I'm from Bogota, the capital of Colombia. I work within a small company that is called Wrapup, and we are partners of the World Bank in order to develop Evoke here in Colombia. And as you may know, well, Colombia is a country, as many other countries all over the world. We have deep issues around education, but also we have a lot of opportunities. For example, we have an unemployment rate within youth in Colombia that for these 3 first months of this year, it was 22.5%. And the most critical part of this data is that the rate for women was 32% of unemployment in youth women. Also, we have other kind of issues. For example, if we keep the pace that we are developing in this moment in order to achieve sustainable development goals, Colombia will just achieve 4 of the 70 sustainable development goals for 2030. So we don't have the pace in order to achieve these kind of goals, because we also are thinking in the same way as we usually think. We are not developing social innovation. We are in connecting young people with these kind of challenges. But on the other hand, we have a lot of opportunities. We have opportunities such as the ones that are being developed by the Ministry of Education. They have created a new education innovation lab for higher education institutions. And we have also a lot of private initiatives that are working in order to, for example, to improve and to strengthen 21st century skills in youngsters. So at the end, what we have, the kind of situation that we have here in Colombia is to create an education ecosystem that help youngsters to create their life plans in a sustainable way. And there's where we saw that Evoke could be an opportunity in order to create this kind of ecosystem. I'm going to share my screen in order to show you how Evoke looks like and also how it works and how we implemented last year within a pilot with 200 students here in Colombia, initially in Bogota. So what you are seeing is the look and feel of the program, because Evoke is a program that uses game mechanics in order to develop all the learning process, in order to strengthen the 21st century skills within youngsters, in order to develop a design thinking process to create social innovations around the most critical challenges in the world. Now we are working around a sustainable cities challenge that we are hoping that the next semester is going to be developed within the city of Bogota. So what you are seeing is that Evoke is not just a game, it's like a reality game, because you get into an alternative reality, but then your actions should be reflected on the real world, the kind of projects that you want to implement as a student should be feasible in order to develop in the real world. How does this program work? So initially we identified that there is different kind of problems. So when we identified those kind of problems, we get into the game and an organization appears that is called the Evoke Network. And the Evoke Network it has a lot of different kind of actors within the organizations. Evoke Network has Alchemy, like the main director of the network. It's like the one that give all the students the different kind of missions. There are a lot of different kind of people that are called mentors, and the mentors are people outside the traditional ecosystem, the education ecosystem, because they are experts about innovation or about different kind of specific themes that we are working on. Then we have obviously the students that become agents in order to go through all the process of strengthen their 21st century skills, and also in order to create their own social innovation projects. So these agents they also have a support from the tech guy. This is like a spy organization, so you have the support of the tech guy that gives you a lot of tools in order to develop your mission. And this tech guy is represented in the platform. Our platform, the one that we are using in this moment, is Moodle. Also, we have coaches. Coaches are the teachers, because we are calling teams of agents that comes from schools and also from universities. So we're involving teachers within this process, and they are going to act as coaches for each of the teams. And at the end, also we have our enemy, that it is another organization that is called Broken, and Broken is the one that wants to get the things around the cities go wrong. So we have to fight as teams of young people to keep our cities sustainable. Then when the game starts, Evoke makes a call for those teams, through the institutions. So we see here that schools and universities start to appear, and then the institutions register all the team agents, the agents of teams, sorry, the teams of agents, and the teams of agents comes with their own coach. And we identify from previous iterations of Evoke that we needed to work with the coaches. We have to develop a new part of the program that is intended to train the coaches, because they don't, what we saw in the field is that they don't have the ability in order to give accompaniment to these kind of teams in order to create social innovations. So we are building this new layer for Evoke.
So but Santiago, it's also important to emphasize at this point that the results, one of the challenges is the measurement of these skills, which are 21st century skills, and the coaches themselves are the validators. So the students are provided the tokens as resources based on finishing assignments and doing it with quality. So I just want to emphasize that the teacher's role is important as validators of quality in the system, which links also to the credential issue, that you need to make sure that you have trust in that system. And we use some very basic smart contracts, but this is another area of research that anybody's on the call is interested in, is different ways to use game theory to incentivize kind of trust in the validation of skills. I'm sorry, I just wanted to add that point, Santiago.
Thank you, Bob.
And we'll probably have to finish up in maybe a minute or so.
Yeah, thanks. So what we did is agents, in order to develop their innovation process, they go through different kind of missions, and when they develop their missions, they earn some Evo coins. That is a token that we developed that was based on blockchain, in order to give them an incentive in order to, as a result of the developing of that mission. And also that coin was related not only to the very aspect of completion of the mission, but also of quality in the process of completing that mission. And we use that coin in order to give them some incentive provided from an outside actor that is a sponsor that helps us to support this kind of transaction. And we piloted with Telefónica. We gave the students the opportunity to buy with those Evo coins on data plans, and at the end give back to Telefónica some transparent information of how we did spend those Evo coins and the data plans that they gave us. So we built a chart, a board, in order to share the information of how the resources they gave us were disbursed within the agents. So what we want to do now is to scale Evoke and to take it to another level, taking out the initiative out the curriculum from the schools, and now make an extracurricular activity in order to develop a tournament that make a competition, a collaboration, a competition simultaneously between different kind of teams from different kinds of schools, initially in Bogota, and after that, making this competition all around Colombia.
Thanks, Santiago. So this is an excellent example of how technology could empower students themselves. And this is through project-based learning, in which they're creating projects or business plans to address sustainable development. I want to bring Prima into this discussion because this is a case where there's lots of opportunities, not your traditional actors in education. You've got Broken, you've got Alchemy, but they are all actors. And there are opportunities for kind of pushing the envelope on the use of the technology. Prima, I wonder if you can just come in and kind of share just a few ideas that you have to kind of build off of what Santiago and the team has done in Colombia.
Thank you so much, Bob. I'm a part of the Technology and Innovation Lab here at the World Bank Group, and I've had the opportunity to kind of see evoke right from phase 1 through phase 2, and I'm really happy to see the kind of practitioners we have on call today. I'm going to very quickly switch video off because I have internet issues, but I did want to put a face to the name. So I have a couple of questions, or rather ideas, that I want to bounce off the team. I really loved Ekoa's presentation and Santiago's as well. So maybe my ideas are for both of you to just probably see if you see there's relevance or not. So I think a couple of issues with Evoke, or a couple of opportunities with Evoke that we see, first around governance of network. And I wanted to explore opportunities here where we can create a similar atmosphere like the DAO, or what we call the Edu DAO, which was in Greg's presentation, where we're looking at, a decentralized autonomous organization which has its own set of governance, its own set of rules, and it can execute actions without intermediaries. This also gives an opportunity for us to create evoke kind of subsets across different countries to allow us to create a replication and ease of subsets. So that was, one option or one aspect that I wanted to actually bring forth. The second was around, I think the biggest opportunity here is also to look at how do you incentivize for content creation, and there maybe explore the options around non-fungible tokens. This could be both, for graphic designers who are creating the content, for players in or actors in the system who are, generating photographic images or any other evidence that could help complete the mission, because I do remember some of these key terms. The advantages are that they're unique. It cannot be replaced with anything. So I think the concept of non-fungible tokens in an evoke gaming system. The other aspect that I really wanted to bring forth, and Greg's explanation around the European platform, ECOWAS concept here as well, Wesley mentioning that governments should be a part of this process, and I wanted to bring forth something that another expert we spoke to, Brian Brooks, he mentioned the concept of country coins, where governments actually reward people with country coins for continued learning. I found this interesting because now students earn coins by learning, and these coins represent a stake on a future trust fund, which is set up by the government. And payouts on tokens are directly related to the revenue generated from an increased GDP, and therefore increased share in taxes. So I wanted to actually, run through three of these different concepts along with stable coins, and try to understand if you see any application of these in projects like ACE in Africa, or Santiago for Evoke in Colombia, and across the, when we're looking at global expansion of such concepts as well. Bob, did I miss anything out?
No, that's perfect. I mean, also one other idea was this issue of whether the data that students collect has any value. And when we were working with Consensus, maybe Chip remembers, there's a group called the Bounty Network that was providing value for students to go out and collect data on environmental issues. So there's lots of possibilities here, but maybe Santiago, in 30 seconds, maybe respond quickly to some of those ideas.
Well,
and then we'll get to Turkey. Hakan, you next.
Thank you, Prima. Well, I think that all those alternatives are feasible and maybe are needed because we have a lot of actors. We have private sector as sponsors, we have the government, we have individuals as mentors, we have the teachers, we have also the students. So we have a governance model. We need this modern governance model for Evoke. Also the content creation. We have different kind of content that should be created, because one of the main aspects of Evoke is that you can change the layer. You can change the layer from sustainable cities to how to protect social leaders, for example. But you need to create those new content and to adapt the tool. And it would be great to have a system that incentivizes the creation of that kind of content. But I have a great concern about the challenge of how to get the government involved in all this equation, because it's easier to get the private parties to participate within the Evoke. But due to the fact that we have a very strict procurement regulation, this should be one of the challenges, how to create a pilot, how to create something to show them that this is feasible, and then start the process in order to change their culture and their mind to participate in this kind of projects.
Thanks, Santiago. That's a fantastic segue. I know we're at time, but if we can stay on for another 10, 15 minutes, that would be fantastic. I'm sorry we didn't manage it as well, but it's a great segue to move to a government perspective. And we have Hakan with us from the Ministry of Education in Turkey. That is going to share a bit about the ecosystem that they're building to facilitate more exchange of value in the area of digital content and to engage teachers as innovators. Hakan?
Thank you very much, Bob. Hi, everyone. My name is Hakan. I work for the Ministry of National Education and especially for the DG for Innovation and Educational Technologies. I'm responsible for development of educational technologies and projects department. So, yes, we have been focusing on establishing an EdTech ecosystem for a couple of years. Especially we have a Education Vision 2023 document, and it envisages an EdTech ecosystem, a participatory ecosystem for the education.
We lost Hakan?
We lost Hakan for a second. Hakan, are you there? So let me fill in a little bit while we're waiting for Hakan to unfreeze himself. The project is supported by the World Bank, and it's very innovative in its nature. What it looks to do is to create an ecosystem amongst the private sector, the universities, NGOs, to be able to provide additional education content and resources to the education platform in the ministry, as well as to kind of marry those innovators with teachers so that teachers can identify challenges and issues. And I think one of the interesting aspects is kind of how to kind of incentivize that network to be able to provide kind of resources at a much more micro scale. I mean, one of the challenges we face in procurement is kind of procuring kind of large stacks and large procurements. And how can we help governments develop systems that would allow them to do much smaller micro procurements? And this is something that I think was referenced by Alex in terms of the work that's being done in Estonia. But Hakan's back. I kind of filled the gap in a little bit for you, Hakan, while you were gone. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Bob. I reconnect and I could manage to join again. Sorry for this. I don't know why, but the program kicked me out of this meeting. Thank you very much. I was talking about the Education Vision 2023 of Turkish National Education System, and we focus on developing EdTech ecosystem in our education system. But as Alex said, when we talk about education system, we need to start to think about the ecosystem model, because we connect organisms, we connect people, we connect institutions, and they all need their own needs. So we need to plan an ecosystem, an open network to include all those stakeholders. This is the key part of our ecosystem planning. And as you already know, we have designed and started a World Bank project, Safe Schooling and Distance Education project, and establishing an EdTech and digital education ecosystem is a part of this project. And there is a specific component for this project, and we are aiming at increasing the number of digital contents in our digital education platform. And also we focus on establishing and strengthening a new educational technologies ecosystem in Turkey.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Hakan. I just want to emphasize that the project is just getting started. They're doing a feasibility study, exploring ways in which the blockchain might work. to facilitate this exchange. Hakan, I mentioned and emphasized the issue of crowding in solution providers from the private sector, marrying them with teachers, which I think is very interesting. Let me bring Luis into this discussion. And Luis, please introduce yourself and maybe share some of the perspectives from your work on the European side, and maybe some reflections on kind of, now that Turkey is at this very initial stage, maybe some lessons or some possible areas of collaboration. Luis?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thanks, Bob. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. As said by Bob, my name is Luis, and in my day-to-day, I am the CIO of a public university in Spain, trying to add value to my university throughout technology. And in my second life, I am the co-convener of the diplomas use case at the European Blockchain Partnership on the Pan-European Blockchain Service Infrastructure Project, the so-called EBCI project. That's it. I'm glad to be here and also have the opportunity to speak with Hakan and to contribute to the world's blockchain discussion space. So yes, now maybe we are with 2 years since we started in Europe. I think that now some of the comments that Alex provided before and some of the comments that Hakan also has provided right now really need to take into consideration, because at the end, yes, of course, blockchain is technology, but from our experience, from the lessons learned, I think that technology is the minor problem. So really, to do a right approach with the ecosystem, with the key stakeholders, to define the roles for governance, and so on. That's for me the main point, the main focus that should be addressed. Okay, so Hakan, maybe and before moving to the blockchain aspects of your initiative of your project, may I say that I love seeing the global approach that is being considered in the Turkey's 2023 strategy, including not only students and teachers but parents as well. Personally, I think that contemplating this entire set of actors together with the schools and higher education institutions is a solid base. I really love how the principles of education in the period of the Republic, extending them with a philosophy of human being and flexibility of education has been approached. I also believe that it is important to contemplate from the design in the vision, the flexibility of education and its accreditation as an element to take into account in the impact on existing information systems and in the measurement of both the performance and the progress of students. Because at the end, blockchain can help on that. But vision must be previous to that. And so you can identify and take the opportunities of where blockchain can really add value to that. I suppose that the connection with the employment system is also considered on your as part of your stakeholders. Just for that recognition of the skills of that flexible education. Is that correct, Hakan? Are they part of the governance in the 2023 strategy?
Yes, we can say skill-based economy is also envisaged in the Vision 2023 document. And of course, in our ecosystem design, we have some interoperability issues within the project. So we need to use the data from the Ministry of Labor. So we need to match them with our with our national education platform, and this data will be used to define or to accredit some skills of the students and the needs of the employers or employees. So this is also taken into consideration when we design the ecosystem model. And I can just briefly mention our triangle about ecosystem. So we have 3 pillars of our ecosystem. One is EdTech Hub, which will bring together all the companies or startups or all the developers, individuals, and we are going to have an R&D model there, and we are looking for a blockchain model to manage this R&D model. And the second part is PLL. We call it Professional Learning Lab. It will function to transform innovation into the classroom level, to combine innovation with pedagogy, and will level up or will scale up the innovation at school or classroom level. We are going to have a CPD, continuous professional development model there, and it will be based on blockchain solutions. So teachers will be able to accredit or will be able to assess their peers, and their skills will be evaluated by their peers. This will be another solution we are looking for in terms of blockchain. And the last one is connection between EdTech Hub, PLL, and national digital platform. We will have a virtual space to connect all the stakeholders, and we will have a blockchain solutions for this virtual platform. This is our model.
I think that it's really interesting and ambitious, just mixing EdTech Hub, innovation, accreditation, but also peer reviewing, virtual space. I think that really Hakan is a really interesting project. But yes, I also agree with you that one of the key points here, and Alex also commented about it before, is the 4 dimensions of interoperability. That's one of the key points, and I don't know if the service that will be provided will be yes, it will be provided by public and private entities, but will be just for these 3 main, this triangle of the ecosystem, or it could be a public service provided for the whole for the whole activities in Turkey.
And maybe Hakan, if we can answer this in the last 2 minutes, and then we'll wrap up. There was also one additional question that links into the issue of interoperability around micro procurement and the opportunities for decentralized procurement, if you want to touch on that as well, that came through the chat. But over to you, Hakan, to kind of answer this and maybe wrap up.
Yeah, these are some challenges we also have in our minds. So interoperability issues is a challenge from the legal basis and from the operational basis. So we need to have some common ground with the related parties, and it will be a part of our new project, and stakeholder consultations will be used to solve those issues. Also, we also have decentralization challenges, of course. You know, Turkey has a centralized education system, and decentralization is important. So we attach too much importance to include teachers and schools. We believe that if we want to change the education system, we need to change the teacher at first. So we envisage, we promote bottom-up change in our education system. We have some experiences in this. We have some pilot projects in this, and we are going to benefit from it. We are going to determine the multiplier teachers, determine connector teachers, and determine some model schools. And we are going to level up, going to roll out the innovation throughout the country. This is our plan, and we are going to see what we are going to do in the next couple of years.
Thank you, Hakan. It's a fascinating project, and I encourage all of you that are interested to get in touch with Hakan and try to make connections, and please share your experience, because I think there's huge potential in what the Turkish team is trying to accomplish, and lots to learn. I think there are more questions than answers. So I want to pass back to Chris and Alex for kind of a 30-second wrap-up. And thank you for those that stayed on. We didn't manage time very well, but it was a fantastic discussion. Chris, over to you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Bob. You know, I just want to say this is always exciting. I think it's getting better and better each time. You know, I think we're starting to really understand what this community is after and how we can really be effective in showcasing some of this work. So amazing case studies. We're looking forward to more, and please join us, you know, 2 months, you know, same bat time, same bat channel. So, you know, join us. We'd love to continue unpacking this more. So thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. And we're kind of plucking individuals from the community to lead different sessions. And I want to thank Alex for leading this one. Alex, do you have any final thoughts or reflections?
No, I mean, I think it's just about, this is the power of the network. And I think it would be good if we could structure this, that people, I mean, I've been looking at the chat box, some people saying, how can we find out who else is here? So I don't know what happens with data protection and the rest of it, but this is a closed network. It would, because I think if we're going to wait for 2 months, there's a lot which happens in 2 months. So, and there are people that want to connect horizontally as well, though I think this is where the World Bank is really playing a critical role, that you can get a whole bunch of us from all around the world to talk to each other and learn from each other. And the same thing with Chris and Chris's network. So let's make the most of this opportunity. It's been great fun doing this anyway.
No, thanks a lot to all of our speakers, Alex, Clarissa, Chris, everyone for sharing. I encourage everyone to kind of continue to make these connections between now and June, because there's lots that we can continue to discuss. We have set up a group that we will a site that will be able to share information. We've recorded this session and we'll captured all of the information in the chat, which we'll share back to you. So again, thanks everybody for a fantastic discussion, and we're looking forward to deepening these discussions and learnings over the next 2 months and continuing the discussion on the next topic, which will be the skills economy, looking at the value of skills and how that skills economy might work in June. So I'm inviting everybody back, and thanks again. Fantastic discussion. Cheers, everybody.